What's going on, TSS viewers? Your boy Zach Lesage is back. Yep, it's been a hot minute, but I am creating content for the Shuffle Squad again. This is going to be my first video back, so I hope you all enjoy it. It's going to be the best decks heading into the weekend. I hope to do this as a regular series on the channel. Aim is to do it once a week, but maybe it's not always going to be once a week. I do want to create content at least once or twice a week, so stay tuned for some awesome stuff. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the top 10 decks in our format right now. I've regularly been playing Marvel Snap lately, and not to say that I've been giving up on Pokemon or anything else like that, but I always look for the newest tier list every single week, and I hope this provides the same value to you if you're playing in Cups, Regionals, anything in between. Really, I hope that these lists are the best lists for all the decks in the format, and that my top 10 lists are going to be incredibly accurate. The lists are available in the pinned comment, so you can copy and paste those into PTCG Live, play them for your cups, whatever you want. I'm also going to be explaining why these decks are positioned so well, or what the general strategy of those decks are. If you're looking for codes, cards, sleeves, anything, we do have a long list of sponsors in our description, so that does really help support the Shuffle Squad and myself. So if you want to help support this video, do that. Give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's jump into our number 10 pick. Let's get it. Kicking off this list at number 10 is Lost Zone Tina. Now, this deck has seen success in previous format, and Lugia kicked it out of the last format, and here we are. We all thought it was going to be the best deck in format. What's really changed? Well, there's a lot of Lost Zone box decks that are seeing success right now, and even though that this one is a Lost Zone deck itself, it does have that 1-1 line of V-Star, 2-2 line of V-Star, and you really have to kind of deal with that, so you're a little bit slower than those. Now, you do have a Snorlax that is typically good against Lost Zone box decks because it has a high amount of damage output and HP, but we can be a little bit slower, and we have two prize card Pokemon to deal with. Now, the general strategy of this deck is going to be similar to any Lost Zone box deck, getting them into the Lost Zone so you can attack with Cramorant, get your Mirage Gate off, and eventually Sableye. We do have a lot of spreadability with Radiant Greninja and Sableye, so that's where there's a lot of opportunities. This list is largely based off what Isla Sutherland has been playing at some online events, so shout out to them. But it's really one of those things where I think that this deck's okay, and if you're thinking about playing it for Portland or any of the events going on this weekend, it's a fine deck choice. Just realize you might be a little bit of an underdog to some of the Lost Zone box decks, and to Lugia in general. However, you can do well against decent parts of the metagame. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road pick deck than a deck that's naturally going to take a lot of really good matchups. So that's my current take on the deck. Let me know what you think. As all these lists have on this thing, we have the lists in the comments below, so check out the pinned comments. I'm going to have all the lists available there for you to copy and paste. Let's jump into number 9. Number 9 has another Tina deck. This time we're going to be going with Arc Tina. Now, the difference between this deck and last deck is going to be a lot more than just like, hey, it plays Arc and the other one plays Lost Zone box. The goal of this deck is you're mainly an Arc deck, and you're going to be powering up things with Trinity Nova and Trinity Charge, accelerating energies onto your other Arc and to your Tina so that you're able to have things. Now, we don't necessarily get all the cool opportunities to use like the Star Requiem V-Star attack from Tina V-Star, but we're mainly going to be using Starbirth here, and Starbirth is going to allow us to grab out whatever we need. So after we're powering up our Pokemon, we can take big attacks with Tina. The Cleansing Gloves in this deck is actually pretty hot because you're able to do an additional 30 damage to both Mew VMAX and to your opponent's Gardevoir EX. So we do have a lot of cool things where Cleansing Gloves can come in clutch to get those things. Largely, you can't use Choice Belt against an EX Pokemon. I know it's really tough to kind of go over about, but that's where I've been at. You just go Path, Judge against your opponent and hope they brick. You have Barrel and Squavit. You can put your hand down to Squavit, and then just use Barrel to draw cards. So you have a lot of reach when it comes to this deck, so you can use things over and over again. I think that this deck has a lot of opportunities. I'm not sure if I like this better than the Arc Dura Vulpix deck, just because it doesn't necessarily have all the answers to the format that it has, but it's a general, consistent, steady, easygoing 1-2 step kind of deck that I think we'll see a lot of players playing it at Portland and other events this weekend. It might not be the most effective deck in the format, but it is consistently strong. I promise I'm not just going in order when it comes to these things and going like, hey, you want to know what we went from a Tina deck to an Arc Tina deck, from an Arc Tina deck to an Arc Dura deck. But that's just how this list is shaping out, and it's my personal list when it comes down to it. It's one of those things where, you know, I choose decks based off how I think they're going to perform. I'm not always right, but regardless, let's jump into it. We already went over an Arc deck, so we're going to be powering up things similarly with Arc in this case. In this case, we're powering up Duraludon VMAX and Alolan Vulpix V-Star. Occasionally, we could power up Drapion or even Lumineon. Where this deck differs is we're using Duraludon VMAX to kind of block out anything with special energies. Now, a lot of decks like Goodra V-Star play a couple V-Guard energy, or you might even see from the Tina deck, they have V-Guard energy as well. V-Guard's one of the bigger ones in format, but a Lugia V-Star deck does play special energies, and we can kind of block it. And sometimes Mew VMAX, you can get them with Skyscraper, although they typically play Path to the Peak. Alolan Vulpix V-Star is really the star of this deck, even though it's at a 1-1 lineup, and that's because when you use its first attack, you can go through anything first and foremost, so attacking through Miltanks, attacking through Duraludons, stuff like that. But your opponent's Pokemon, as long as they don't have abilities, you can just stop them from doing damage to your Alolan Vulpix V-Star. That means that Cramorant can't attack it. That means that Radiant Charizard can't attack it. That means other Arceus V-Star can't attack it. That means there's a lot of Pokemon that cannot attack it. It solves the format. This list is largely Alex's winning EUIC deck. I don't think I've actually changed anything. And of course we have Drapion V for Mew VMAX as well. Where I think this deck is well positioned is there's going to be a lot of players just grabbing lists from EUIC, and there's going to be a continuation of that event at Portland and other similar regionals going on this weekend, along with League Cups, League Challenges. Where I think this deck might fail is decks like Arc Tina, for example, play 4 Path to the Peak, Mew's playing Path to the Peak, and there's opportunities to just attack through Alolan Vulpix V-Star. I think Gardevoir EX decks are a little bit more prepared, and I also think that some Lost Zone variants are getting a little bit more prepared. So Alex was largely right when he was saying players were prepared to kind of deal with this deck, but I don't think all players are going to be prepared. So if you're thinking about playing this deck, could be a hit, but you got to watch out for the matches because it is a known deck to players who are prepared for events. Jumping into our number 7 pick, this might be a little controversial, but I think Lugia V-Star is still a solid play for events going on this weekend and in general. Lugia V-Star is all about getting Archeops into the discard pile and summoning them with Summoning Star, and yeah, that can be a little bit of a coin flip generator with cards like Messagoza and capturing Aroma and just the opening coin flip of the game. But I think that this list does a good job at trying to minimize those coin flips. And we have a lot of single prize card Pokemon that are appropriately picked for the metagame. We also have the Radiant Serena to heal damage against our opponent's Lost Zone box decks. This deck has a pretty great Lost Zone box matchup, might have the opportunity to compete with Mew, and has opportunities to compete with decks like Gardevoir as well. So Lugia, not entirely dead as a lot of players think it is. Now, you might have seen some lists from EUIC that run Duraludon and Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. I don't think Lugia is going to be played a lot, and I could be wrong. These are my thoughts. But if you run into a Duraludon, you lose anyways. If you had Duraludon, you probably just lose to the Arc Tina Dura or the Arc Dura deck anyways, because it's just not enough to beat that deck. Ask Alex, ask Josh, they would tell you the same thing. So while you lose to Lugia Mirror if they play Duraludon, or if they play Single Strike Urshifu, it becomes a little bit more tough, and we lose to the Arc Dura Vulpix deck, we probably would have lost to most of those anyways, or had a 50-50, but where we really do gain is the consistency added to this deck when it comes to beating Lost Zone box and stuff like that. Zinnia's Resolve is probably a card that I might get a few questions about in the comments below, and still leave me those questions in the comments below because it helps boost the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the Shuffle Squad and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's one of those things where there's a lot of Pokemon in play that in general, a lot of decks are full benching it up, so we can discard 2 Archeops and draw cards without pitching our hands. So I thought it was cool to add that card into this deck. I try to always create the best decks possible, and when I can't, I search for the best decks possible. But a lot of testing does go into my lists, although I will admit that they're not always perfect. But hopefully you enjoy it, and maybe we'll give this deck a try. Let's jump into our number 6 pick. Splashing its way in is our first Lost Zone box deck of kind of a true Lost Zone box nature. I know we went over the Tina version, but we got Lost Zone box with Kyogre and Galarian Moltres. So to me, the way that I see this, it's a pretty cool deck. I know that Nick Moffat made top 16 at EUIC, and a few of the Dead Draw Gaming members have been seeing success at their cups with this. I mean, there's been a few other players. But I think it's positioned towards the top, and this is where the list can get a little bit like jagged when it comes to it. Do I think this deck could be higher placed? Yeah, but it kind of falls into the Lost Zone box kind of variations that we'll see. And sure, I'll let you know about a surprise. There's a few more Lost Zone box decks up there. If you've been playing on the PTCG Live ladder, any online events or league cups, league challenges, anything, Lost Zone box is a lot of places, which is hence why we have Lugia in the list, just to give you a heads up. We got there. So the goal of this deck, we have a little bit more options than what we had with the Tina deck. We can attack with Cram and Sableye like we could. Here we can really go with Snorlax. Snorlax is great against some single prize card Pokemon. I know we had that in the Tina deck too, but I'll explain it a little bit better here. Cramorant can't really knock it out, and it can't be affected by any effects of attacks, so something like Sableye can't get it, which means it's pretty good against Lost Zone box Mirror. Snorlax might be able to get a few punches in, drawing prize cards. Its damage output's pretty great too. Galarian Moltres gives us opportunities to attack things like Gardevoir EX and other single prize card Pokemon in Mew VMAX as a single prize card Pokemon. And Kyogre is kind of the star of the show towards the late game. It's a little bit of the wombo combo, but you're able to kind of thin your deck down to nothing, accelerate energies with Mirage Gate, and then use Energies Recycler to finish off the game, flipping over 5 energies, sniping things for 250. Of course, you have to watch out for Manaphy. Obviously, you're not going to make that play into a Manaphy, and you can always Sableye it off the face of the planet, but there's a lot of really cool things going on here. So it is a combo, and it's probably not as don't do it in the exact order that I say. You want to make sure that you have the energies for Mirage Gate, and it requires a lot of planning. But regardless, this deck has a lot of power. There are a lot of decks that are playing Manaphy, and looking towards a lot of the top decks in format, yeah, they are playing Manaphy, except Mew, as far as I can tell, and Mew's going to be up there too. But that's one of the reasons why I place this deck at number 6. However, I do think that it has the potential, or any Lost Zone box deck has the potential to kind of shift a little bit higher, because the builds are very similar across the board, and some Lost Zone box decks might be better positioned than others at certain events. It also depends on matchups, but this is the list that we got going on. Shout out to Nick Moffat. In the middle of the road at number 5, we have Goodra V-Star. Again, another Lost Zone box variant. And this one's positioned pretty well in the metagame because it typically does well against Lost Zone box variants, just because Rolling Iron and Moisture Star really slow down your opponent's damage output. So like, you reduce their damage by 80, they do all that damage, then you heal. Sometimes they just aren't able to get around. There are a lot of decks that are going to be incorporating cross switchers, maybe escape rope, boss, in order to get around this attack and ability combo. But there are opportunities there that they don't. And maybe you could Roxanne your opponent into nothing, and they get nothing going on there. This build, I believe, is largely from Aiden Cuss's list from top 8 at EUIC. So shout out to them. I don't know if there's anything that I've really changed. Maybe I changed a couple cards here or there. But I think it's a generally solid list that has opportunities. This deck might struggle a little bit against Gardevoir, but you still have opportunities. Maybe you could Radiant Greninja them earlier if they don't put their Manaphy down. There's also opportunities for you to see success against Mew. And again, like I said, you do pretty well against Lost Zone box decks in general. So if you're looking for a pretty easygoing take on Lost Zone box or Lost Zone archetypes, and you're trying to beat certain decks at the top of the metagame, and you're okay taking a loss towards Gardevoir, a pretty close matchup, this might just be the deck for you. I think this is a deck that does not get explored as often as other decks, so it doesn't necessarily have that widespread appeal for some reason. Maybe players just aren't into these tanky healing control decks, but I do feel like they have the opportunity to really kind of put some damage in this weekend. Like, I think like Goodra is one of my top choices, even though it's number 5. I think it's number 5 in terms of placement, but it's definitely one of my top choices because I think it just seems super strong right now. I got a gut feeling. I also really like decks with Drapion. Mew's going to be like, if you could just hit double Drapion against Mew, probably good times. And I mean, if you're really struggling against Mew, maybe a third Drapion would be sick. One thing that I might comment about this list is I might want to add in a Crystal Cave as a third stadium. I think I'd want that, especially with the double Drapion. Not sure if I necessarily have a cut for it or not yet. Maybe it'd be a Pokegear, or maybe it would be, I honestly don't know, maybe it would be a Pokegear, but we'll see how it goes. Right now, I think this is a solid choice for Portland in any upcoming events. Also, if you need any codes, by all means, check out our description below. We got the link for the PTC Geo store discount. Same thing for Atlas if you're looking for any of these cards physically. Hopping into number 4 is Mew VMAX. Now, Mew VMAX has largely been a contender since it came out in Fusion Strike, and it's no different now. Even though a lot of the decks on this list do feature Drapion, this deck is packing 4 Path to the Peak to shut off that ability and making Drapion cost 4 energies to attack. Now, some of those Lost Zone decks can Mirage Gate over to Drapion, and it is possible for them to power it up. But Mew can often overcome that as well, just by using Roxanne or Judge to really put your opponent into their hand into a blender, is the way that I like to put it. You got a lot of opportunities here to just like go ahead, set down a bunch of basic Pokemon, draw cards with Fusion Strike system, and copy either Max Miracle, Techno Blast, or Psychic Leap. Those are really the attacks that we're going to be choosing from. My list is largely based on Pablo Meza's top 4 list from EUIC. I did add in a couple things that I thought were cute, like the Silene. I've always been a fan of Silene in this deck. I also really like Cleansing Gloves in this deck. Maybe we could cut a Choice Belt, but I think the Cleansing Gloves is good in a Mew VMAX Mirror and also helpful against Gardevoir EX. Again, we cannot use Choice Belt against EX Pokemon, so don't get caught off guard if you haven't necessarily got a chance to play in one of these tournaments yet. Maybe you're heading to your first League Challenge, League Cup. Do make sure that you are able to compare your experiences between EX and V-Star, VMAX, V-Union Pokemon. I think that Mew VMAX, even though that it does have some counters, we saw Galarian Moltres and Drapion, we do have a lot of answers for those counters in this deck, and this deck does take pretty good matchups against a lot of the field. Again, very middle of the road, but Mew is powerful. It is a discovered archetype. We've seen it, how it gets built, so even if it's not even the best deck, it probably has one of the best deck builds that's really discovered in this format. So consider that when you're going through your decks. Some of these decks, like Gardevoir or Miraidon EX, don't necessarily have a complete build when it comes down to it. We've only been playing them for a couple weeks. It seems like a lot more, but it's only been a couple weeks. So Mew definitely has the discovered build. So if it's one of your comfort picks, might just be a great choice for this weekend. Hopping into our number 3 pick is the turbo version of Lost Zone Box, or Lost Zone Box that plays Mirage Gates. I know there's a bunch of different names that go on for these decks, and I'm gonna go with turbo for this one since I think that's the one that's most commonly called, but I do want to let people know that it means it plays Mirage Gates. We're trying to get our tool cards into the Lost Zone very turbo, very quickly, so we can Lost Vacuum away a Forest Seal Stone after using it and stuff like that. Really where this deck changes from the other Lost Zone Box builds that we've looked at, and I'll kind of run through it, is we play a combination of V Pokemon, or 2 prize card Pokemon that are matchup specific. So we have Raikou for like a Lugia V-Star matchup. We have Dragonite V that can really pack a punch against a lot of decks. It's also one of those Pokemon that does not have abilities, so it can go against an Alolan Vulpix V-Star. Drapion is very good against something like a Gardevoir EX because you can power up with Mirage Gate. You could also attack a Mew VMAX with it. Watch out for Path to the Peak. Sky Seal Stone gives you the opportunity to turn one of those V Pokemon into drawing 3 prize cards or 4 prize cards, depending if you're attacking a V-Star or a VMAX Pokemon. And of course, Forest Seal Stone does allow us to search for things like Colress, making our deck very consistent. You can see with all those Lost Vacuums and Forest Seal Stones and stuff, we have a lot of ways to get extra cards into the Lost Zone. So that's what makes this deck turbo. I think this deck has a lot of opportunities to see success. And I mean, I've really thought about playing this deck 2 events. I mean, I played it at a League Cup a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was a cool pick. Didn't necessarily work out as good as what I wanted it to be, but it does seem like it has a lot of opportunities to see success in this format. One thing that I'm looking at my list right now, I might want to add in a Snorlax to try to have a little bit of a better mirror matchup. So that might be something that we might want to add in. If I were to add in a Snorlax, that's a tough cut, or a tough card to put in here. I'm not entirely sure where I'd make the space for it. I think the space would probably have to be like a Nest Ball or a Lost Vacuum. when it came down to it, probably a Lost Vacuum. So if you are considering doing that, that might be a really cool card to add into your deck. Other than that, I think this list is really great, heavily inspired by Cal Connor, who sent the majority of this list towards me. So check it out, see if it's good, but it's definitely one of the better Lost Zone box builds that we have in this format, and I think it's going to see a lot of success, and a lot of top players are going to be playing this deck. Here we have our runner-up, our number 2 pick. It's Gardevoir EX. Now, Gardevoir EX, this is my current take on the deck, heavily inspired by what Tord Rekliv played at EUIC coming second. Gardevoir EX is all about accelerating energies with Psychic Embrace to either your Shining Arcana Gardevoir with Brainwave, or to your Zacian V, and you could either attack for its 60 plus 30, so take your choice, single prize card version or 2 prize card version. It depends on the HP, because you do add damage counters with Psychic Embrace, so which one can handle more depends on how big your damage output can be. I've changed up a few cards when it came to this deck, and I mean, I've cut some things, largely just trying to make the deck a little bit more consistent, but this deck has been working extremely well in coaching and testing and kind of play testing and all that kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's working well. So I think I would definitely go with this kind of build. I've seen lists with 4 rare candies. I like everything going on with this deck. The thing that I don't like about this deck is that it struggles against Lost Zone box decks sometimes, because you just don't have enough single prize card Pokemon to really like close out those matchups. And Zacian V is largely getting 2 shots, or it's getting 1 shot after you use some Psychic Embrace. Now, we might want to add some single prize card Pokemon in this deck. I know that I did take out Cresselia, but I do think the Lost Zone box matchup has been largely bad enough that I don't want to include that card in this deck. So maybe there's some other things. I know that some players might be wanting to check out Mewtwo, V-Union, and Klefki and stuff like that. That might work. I largely think that there's other decks that might see success, but if you want to roll with it, roll with it. I can't tell you if you're going to have a bad deck or not have fun, but I do think that there might be better opportunities to be playing other decks than the Mewtwo version at this current time. However, my opinion might change after I test it a little bit more. I think that Gardevoir EX is really, really, really consistent because of Kirlia's refinement and Shining Arcana and everything else that we have going on this deck. So I really like it in a 2 out of 3 environment. And I think if you're hitting not Lost Zone box every single round, you have a pretty good chance of going far in the tournament. Tor just came second. Maybe we'll see this deck truly shine again. Hopping in at number 1 is my top choice for Portland and all the regionals going on this weekend and League Cups, League Challenges. We got Lost Zone Radzard. I think that this deck is absolutely sick when it comes down to it, because you have all the functions of a single prize card deck, all the Lost Zone decks, and you also could go Radiant Charizard and swing for a lot of damage for very few energy. I do think that the Turbo Lost Zone box build does have a little bit more opportunities to outplay your opponent. This deck is kind of the consistent version of that in my head, where it's just like you have very few attacks, but you do get progressively better as the game progresses, because you can use Radiant Charizard at the end of the game, and you could Raihan to it and attach an energy. There are a couple things that I might want in here, like a copy of Magma Basin, because that works well with the cross switchers. I do like the cross switcher build right now because I have been facing a lot of Goodra, and I think the cross switcher build is generally cool when it comes to this deck. But I do like, I don't know, this deck's really consistent. It's really powerful. You have all the options of a Lost Zone box deck, but you're a little bit more consistent. Maybe you don't necessarily do as well against Lost Zone box as other variants, but you still have the same opportunities to outplay your opponents, and it has a really strong matchup against the decks that typically do. Well, I don't want to say a really strong matchup. It has a better chance against most decks that do well against Lost Zone box than other traditional Lost Zone box builds. You could add in the Mawile like Pedro played, but I think it's a little bit more of a discovered tech right now, and I find that it's better against Lugia V-Star in my experience. And I also cut the Miltank. Again, the Miltank has not necessarily been as strong as I want it in my testing. I also cut the Pidgeot and the Forest Seal Stone. Those are cards that you could add in here. Again, the Cross Switcher package takes up space. Those cards take up space. I think there's like 5-6 cards that you could make your own personal list, but this is my personal list that I have built on PTCG Live right now. And the Cross Switchers have been absolutely sick for me to take prize cards and stuff like that. Again, I might want to add the Magma Basin in this deck to make it a little bit better, and at that point I might want to add an Ultra Ball, but it's really one of those decks that I think is quite powerful, and I think we're going to see a lot of it this weekend. Whether you're playing the events or just kind of spectating the events or online kind of hearing about the events, I think this one's definitely going to be one of the most played decks this weekend. And that's what we got going on with our list. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Let me know in the comments below. Every single comment does help with that algorithm boost, so I really would appreciate if y'all could say something down there. Maybe you like the videos. What do you want to see content-wise from me, the rest of the Shuffle Squad? I've been taking on different roles this season, and now that I have a little bit more time, I will be jumping back into it. So hopefully you see more of me in videos if that's something you want to see. That being said, help support the Shuffle Squad and myself by checking out the sponsors in the description below. Whether you're looking for cards from Atlas, or you're looking for sleeves from Ultimate Guard, or maybe you're looking for something in between like code cards to build these decks on PTCG Live from PTCGO Store. All of those would be absolutely fantastic to help support us, and we do have those links in the description. If you're looking for the copy and pastable deck list, that will be in a pinned comment. If I haven't added it, I will be adding it. I have some travel. I'm going to Portland. Literally when I'm putting this video up, I'm traveling to Portland, or I'm already in Portland, one or the other, depending on when my flight is. But it's one of those things where I'm actually on my way there a little bit early, so I hope to see many of you on at that trip. And if you are traveling to anything, League Cups, special events, anything else like that, I hope that you have safe travels and best of luck. If you need anything, hit us up in the DMs or in the comments. I'll catch up with all y'all later. Peace out and have a great day.
The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Ultimate Guard. Ultimate Guard provides premium protection for your cards. If you need anything from sleeves to deck boxes, then Ultimate Guard has you covered. If you're a player or just a collector, you know that your cards will be protected. Check out their top-of-the-line katana sleeves. These are the best sleeves on the market with a clear window for visibility and provide a perfect shuffle. If you're not a fan of clear windowed sleeves, then Cortexes are for you. These matted sleeves are like their katanas, but at a lower price. Their shuffle is just as good and the protection is superb. So, what are you waiting for? Help support the team by checking out the affiliate link below and ordering some fresh Ultimate Guard products today to get you shuffling.
The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Atlas Collectibles, the best place to buy any trading card game product online. Visit atlastcg.com and at the checkout screen make sure to use code TSS12 to save an unbeatable 12% off your entire order. Atlas Collectibles will ship your product anywhere in the world, so make sure you're taking advantage of the 12% savings with TSS12. And if Pokemon is not your thing, don't worry. Go to atlastcg.com and see all the other amazing trading card game products they have there to offer.
The Shuffle Squad is partnered with PTCGO Store to provide our community with the best access to Pokemon TCG codes. They have codes available 24/7, instant email delivery, and you can save 5% off by using code TSS5. If you're a YouTube member or Patreon supporter, you'll have access to a special code that gets you 10% off. So what are you waiting for? Use code TSS5 today and save 5% on your next order of codes on any codes available at ptcgostore.com.
Are you trying to be the best like no one ever was? Now is your time. Head on over to Metafy.gg and search out all our amazing Pokemon TCG coaches where you can book all sorts of training plans ranging from deck help to full season sessions with your favorite coach. What a great way to up your game. Check out Metafy.gg in the description below and take your game to the next level. Challenge yourself against trainers from around the world to compete for the biggest online prizing yet.
Are you ready for an unbelievable tournament unlike anything else you've ever seen before? The Shuffle Squad is proud to announce our newest tournament series, the Late Night Event, with an amazing grand prize that's bound to have you excited.
Players can compete via play.limitless.tcg.com's online tournament platform every Tuesday to get a chance to earn weekly prizes. And every week, your placement in the tournament is tallied by points based on your best finishes to earn your rank for the Late Night Invitational event.
The series will be conducted starting February 7th of 2023 and carry all the way through to the Invitational on July 9th of 2023, where the top players will be rewarded the grand prizing.
And the grand prize is a signed jersey and photo op with the entire Shuffle Squad, as well as a fully paid trip to the Pokemon World Championships in Yokohama, Japan. This includes hotel and airfare, whether you're a player or a spectator.
Don't forget to check out all the live coverage on our YouTube and Twitch channel of the top cuts of these events for every week. And subscribe so you can get notified where to watch the Late Night Events Invitational brought to you by the Shuffle Squad. Now get out there and start winning. We'll see you in Japan.